Carla, are we ready to go? Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first annual and hopefully last Zoom annual convention for South Dakota Farmers Union. This is not the way we'd prefer to do these meetings, but given the set of circumstances we're dealt with today, this is the way we're going to do it, and I think we've got it lined up to do it well and meet the rules that we've set forth. So. I'd urge you all to, if you haven't, go to sdfu.org, and at the bottom of the page you'll see 105th Annual State Convention, a green tab, and on that tab you'll find the agenda and rules for today. If you have trouble with that, let us know, but that's where you can find that for today. Our first speaker today is going to be Hal Clementson. Hal represents Region 4 on the CHS Board of Directors covering South Dakota. Prior to that, he served as the president of the Board of Directors of AgTegra since the formation in 2018. He was the president of the South Dakota Wheat Growers Association from 2005 until the merger with North Central Farmers Elevator in 2018. In 2015, the National Council of Farmers Cooperatives named him Farmer Cooperative Director of the Year. He farms near Condie, South Dakota. Hal, take it away.
Thank you much. I appreciate Carla or Doug or whoever invited me to speak at this meeting. I will keep my comments brief as I look forward to hearing others speak today. I do wish to introduce myself. As you mentioned, I'm Hal Clementson. I'm a fourth generation farmer who farms in the Brentford-Condie area, and I raise corn, soybeans, sometimes wheat, not as much lately, but I am very proud of 30 plus years of co-op service to the, I served on the Redfield Cenex Oil Company board, Wheat Growers, AgTegra, and now I'm on the CHS board, where I serve on the government relations and the corporate risk committees. I can tell you when we get into the slides, we're not quite there yet, but yeah, that'd be great. I have attended 2 board meetings in person. The rest have been on Skype at CHS. The January board meeting and the February strategic planning meeting. I was able to, in March, right before the country kind of got shut down, we went to DC with the Government Relations Committee at CHS and met with representatives and senators to work on the Section 199A and rural infrastructure issues, including locks and dams and railroads and highways. And so we did what we could there, and I don't think a lot has happened since. Things have taken a priority over that. It has been in the last year a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. I have had either on Skype or in person 24 new director orientation sessions, and I also have been working on NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors certification, which took 13 online sessions, and I have not finished that yet, so I'm still working on that. Through this COVID time, I was thankful that I had 30 years of board experience to draw on, because when you're meeting on Skype, it's just, as we all know, it's not the same. And so I'm glad I had that experience that I kind of understood what they were trying to achieve. So now I'd like to give a quick CHS update, and we'll go to that welcome page and skip beyond that to the forward-looking statements. If I could have you. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, this is something that because CHS is a SEC company, we have to show this whenever we do talks, and some of the business and financial topics discussed may be considered forward-looking under the U.S. securities laws. So it is important to understand that actual events could differ from the comments I make today. So on this slide, I always like to show this because, number one, it's a purpose statement. And a purpose statement, creating connections to empower agriculture, is kind of what we expect to live up to as a company. And in fact, that is pretty much, that took a lot of time to come up with those 5 words. There was a lot of work put into that, but that is something that CHS is trying to live up to. And then our values and integrity. We have high standards and we hold ourselves accountable. The safety issue and pillar of our value was tested during COVID. CHS has a very intensive safety position they take throughout the whole world in all their facilities around the world. They're a Minnesota company, so they are very strict. And as far as masks and social distancing and numbers of people that can get together, that is why the annual meeting obviously was held online rather than in person, which made a lot of sense. We also believe in inclusion, and that is excellence and growth from diverse thinking. And one of the favorites of mine is cooperative spirit. We're working together to strengthen our communities. It's very important to me. So if I could have you advance to the next slide, please. There we go. And this slide, if you were at the annual meeting, was talked about and was explained. I will do my best here in fiscal year 2019. There was a huge profit made in energy because the CHS refineries at Laurel, Montana and McPherson, Kansas could use the Canadian sour crude, where a lot of other refineries around the country could not. And so there was a real windfall for those 2 refineries to bring back to member owners. And in 2020 fiscal year, obviously COVID hit. The first half was going really well for the company, but the second half, at one point, they could not hardly find anybody that wanted the gasoline that came off the refineries. They had a real issue because gasoline supplies are so abundant right now. So that put 2020 way behind 2019 ag production, because there was less PP acres is actually better. Nitrogen production is not. Corporate and other includes Ventura Foods, some other joint ventures and other investments that in the food industry, obviously that was hit hard by COVID. So overall net income in fiscal year was $422 million versus $829 in 2019. And in fiscal year 2020, there was a push at CHS to reduce expenses by $50 million, and it was actually cut by about $60 million. For fiscal 2021, there is an additional $100 million in expense cutting. That is the goal. I don't know if we'll get there. That's pretty aggressive. But that is the plan and the goal for CHS for 2021 fiscal year. So if I could have you advance, thank you. Obviously, COVID had a large effect on everybody. And CHS put the health and safety of employees and customers as a top focus of the company. Of the 11,000 employees, 80% of CHS employees are on the ground and working at their jobs. 20%, a lot of which would be in the cities, are working remotely. So there is a lot of time and energy spent into trying to get the workforce safe, but at the same time still deliver services and products that are needed. And that's why out in the country there's certainly more people on the job than working remotely. So if I could have you, yeah, thank you. This is what the fiscal year 2021 priorities by the board are. And number one, we have to navigate the pandemic for the well-being of employees and customers and our owners. That is number one. The safety part of it is number one. Number two, we will deliver on plans to protect the financial health of CHS and our member owners. That is a high priority. And then the number third priority is advancing the operating model to create value through the system and value for our member owners, but also the efficiencies. And that's why we're trying to cut another $100 million. But we're also using this technique to try to strengthen CHS in case there are opportunities. If I could have you turn, thank you. There will be opportunities, we feel, and so we have to have some dry powder available for those opportunities, but we have to cut costs in the company. For equity management, these are the considerations that the board chose and made when deciding how equity management was going to be handled. Number one, ensuring that all decisions are in the best interest of CHS and member owners. That's number one. Number two, as I said, maintaining a strong balance sheet. We have to do that to keep the company profitable and moving forward. And then strengthen the ability to pursue long-term growth. And I do believe that there will be opportunities for growth. We have to be able to look at them and have a long-term strategy to work towards them. I strongly believe in that, looking ahead. If I can have you advance the slide. So the decision that the board made in patronage and equity distribution for fiscal year 20 was the first 10% of 2020 patronage-based earnings is going to the unallocated reserve to continue building balance sheet strength. The first 10% goes there. There will be $63 million worth of cash that comes back to member owners. 30 million of that will be part of the cash patronage up front. 33 million will go to old equity redemption, of which 20 million goes to member co-ops and 13 million to individual members. And that will be, the 13 will be split up in estates and just past patronage payments. There will be 212 million of non-qualified equity certificates that are issued in members' names that will be paid out in the future. So that is the way the board decided it. And then as far as giving back to communities, which I said earlier is a big model of mine. CHS Foundation and Community Giving both are two separate groups, but the foundation supports FFA in a big way, and 17 state FFA organizations, and it touched more than 17,000 students through the CHS Foundation. There was also more than 400,000 in scholarships to ag students to help rural leader development by funding students studies in ag related areas to provide future leaders. And in the community giving side, they gave a lot of money to mental health support through the COVID, and there had been poor economy in farming, and so there was a need for mental health in local communities requests. And then they also gave matching grants to 136 different rural communities for things like rural fire departments and other programs that people brought forward to have a match with CHS. And that's a very important part to me, is that CHS gives back to local communities and local member owners. So in the interest of time, and in the interest of, I want to hear other speakers, and I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to conclude with a couple things, and that is, I believe strongly in the co-op system, and that's why I've spent 30 years serving on co-op boards, because I don't think there's any other company, any other type of company, I should say, any other business organization model that beats a co-op. I think being a member owner and owning the company you do business with is the best way to do business. But I also think for the co-op system to thrive, and maybe even in the future survive, there has to be more cooperation, communication, and collaboration between and amongst co-ops, both on the local and on the regional levels. And that's one of the things I push for when I'm in the boardroom, is co-ops need to work together, and inefficiencies are not going to be there, because we have to get more efficient, and we have to work together, not duplicate assets. And for me, to sum it up, it all comes down to what's best for the individual owners, individual farmer owners, and their needs and their wants, and I want to make sure that their needs are heard in the corporate boardroom. And I guess that's who I'm working for when I'm serving time on any co-op board. It's the individual member owner, and that's where I'm coming from. So with that, I want to thank you for giving me the time to visit with you today, and I'm excited about hearing other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hal. That was a great update on CHS, and it looks like you're a great community partner with some of the donations that you make to the outside group. So that's really great. Our next speaker is Tom Boyco. Tom serves as the CEO and General Manager of East River Electric Cooperative since 2014. Mr. Boyco is just the 5th General Manager to lead East River since the cooperative was formed in 1949. East River is a wholesale electric power supply cooperative serving 24 rural electric cooperatives and 1 municipal-owned electric system, serving more than 92,000 homes and businesses and about 250,000 consumers in South Dakota and western Minnesota. Tom?
Thank you, Mitch. And thank you to Farmers Union for letting me speak today. Appreciate that. You know, first, congratulations on 105 years of existence. That's quite an accomplishment. It takes a lot of commitment. It doesn't just happen. So congratulations on that. East River and South Dakota Farmers Union have a strong relationship that spans many decades, and we appreciate your champion of the cooperative movement. As Hal just spoke about, it is the best organization or type of government to run a business, and it is definitely the best type for rural South Dakota. In East River, we're proud to support your ongoing education programs each year through the South Dakota Farmers Union Foundation. And we appreciate your hard work to advance the cooperative philosophy and invest in the next generation. I want to thank Carla for letting let me talk today and giving us this platform. As year 2020 would have been real nice if we'd got through it without any more issues, but we do have one more issue, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. And it's a lawsuit, and unfortunately, when you're in a lawsuit, I have to be a little bit scripted on my remarks, so I'm going to be reading those here today. But again, thank you for letting us talk today. In early November, Dakota Energy Cooperative, headquartered in Huron, which serves Beetle, Hand, and Hyde counties, we filed a lawsuit against East River Electric seeking to break its long-standing wholesale power contract with East River and start purchasing power from a Denver-based energy brokerage company called Guzman Energy. Some of you may remember Reed Electric, Beetle Electric, Energy, and these two cooperatives merged in 1995 to become Dakota Energy. Reed and Beetle were founding members of East River 70 years ago, but now the board management are looking to break the commitment they made to their fellow cooperative members across the region and seek power from Guzman Energy, who's promising low-cost energy with no investment in South Dakota. We've all seen these sales pitches before. They usually don't end up well. Now, Guzman was started just a few years ago by a group of investors with a mission to lure local cooperatives and municipals away from their wholesale power suppliers with promises of cheaper energy. And they want to break up cooperative networks and a long-standing power supply contract by promising market-based cheaper rates. Again, like many things, when it sounds too good to be true, it's usually going to be a problem. I'll give you an example of how it hasn't worked out very well for one cooperative. In 2016, Guzman was able to lure away a local electric cooperative in New Mexico called Kit Carson Electric from its wholesale power supplier, Tri-State G&T. That happened what's happened to that local co-op since they left is bad for their ratepayers. A year before Kit Carson left Tri-State, their consumers were paying over 14 cents per kilowatt hour. But in 2019, according to public filings with the New Mexico Public Service Commission, their consumers now are paying over 18 cents per kilowatt hour. That's over 30% higher in just 4 years. And their wholesale cost of power has risen even more dramatically, a nearly 42% increase in that time. It's consumers that end up getting hurt, and we don't want to see that happen to rural South Dakota. In the meantime, East River Electric's average wholesale power rates are some of the lowest in the region and have been steady the past 4 years. And in fact, we're forecasting a lower rate for 2021 than 2020. As a cooperative, just like you, we are a cost-based utility, and we use a lot of the wind power from South Dakota, hydropower, and other generating assets we have in South Dakota and North Dakota. We only collect enough revenue to cover the costs of providing power with a small margin to cover unexpected expenses and invest in the future of the co-op. It goes back to our members. Since 1975, East River has returned over $77 million in patronage, $3.6 million of that to Dakota Energy. These are dollars that go back to the local economy and stay in our region. A for-profit entity would take those profits out of state, as you all know. East River only exists because the member cooperatives got together 70 years ago to create their own wholesale supplier. They couldn't rely on for-profit companies of the day to provide them with service. It's the same issues that brought Farmers Union around. So they built our co-op. They built East River. They are East River. They own us. Rural South Dakota is East River. The Farmers Union has a long history of cooperative support, and you all understand that having a say in the operation of your cooperative is extremely important. It's critical. If a cooperative were to leave their wholesale supplier, they would lose any voice they have in the process of setting their own wholesale rates. And that's not the co-op way. Dakota Energy has a representative on the East River board. One member, one vote. You all understand that cooperative principle. They have a say in how the operation is run. something they wouldn't have with a for-profit entity like Guzman. I want to touch on the long-term nature of electric utilities and the importance of long-standing wholesale power contracts. We plan for the long run. It's a capital-intensive industry. We're planning 20 to 30 years into the future to ensure the transmission system runs as efficiently as possible. The long-term contract that Dakota Energy signed in 2015 promised they would buy power through 2075 from East River. This long-term contract serves as collateral for long-term loans that we receive from the Federal Rural Utility Services and others. These long-term loans, they look at these long-term all requirements contracts as guarantees that these loans will be paid back, and then we can get lower cost loans. And rather than charging today's consumers for expensive power plants and transmission lines, we spread out the costs over many years with long-term debt. It allows us to keep our rates stable and not have wild swings depending on the asset we need to build or if the market happens to go up or down at any given time. Said simply, a 70-year-old electric cooperative made up of 25 systems provides stability and certainty, something we all need, especially right now. I also want to talk about risk for a moment. Every one of you on the farm or ranch is trying to minimize risk as best you can. And that's what having East River does for cooperative consumers. It spreads the risk. With Dakota Energy trying to move away from East River, their wholesale power supplier, again, for the last 70 years, they're looking to sign shorter, riskier contracts that rely on short-term energy markets. As you all know, markets go down and they go up. Right now, the energy market's suppressed because of low natural gas prices out there, low energy costs, and renewable energy subsidies that they're receiving. But relying only on the market for your power opens a cooperative up to a lot of risk in the future. East River and its power suppliers, Basin Electric and the Western Area Power Administration, who provides the power from the hydro dams, both buy and sell power on the same energy market. But because of our size and collective contracts, along with ownership of generation assets, we're able to spread the risk over the entire region, not just one cooperative. So what happens if Dakota is successful, if they buy out of East River? It could lead to higher prices for all electric co-ops. So we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure across rural South Dakota, and the remaining members end up having to pay for that. It may also lead to higher costs for Dakota Energy's service territory, which have a negative impact on the local economy. You know, cooperatives were created by people like you, rural residents who not all that long ago didn't have access to electricity. Neighbors got together and said, let's work together to build our own electric co-op. Neighbors helping neighbors to provide a service no one else would provide. That's what cooperatives are all about. So I hope that you'll help us spread the word about the unfortunate situation and help Dakota Energy members realize the effect this can have on them and their cooperative. Those of us who know the value of cooperation need to unite against the forces that try to drive a wedge between members and see it as an opportunity to make a profit. Now more than ever, the cooperative family must stay united for the betterment of all members. So again, I want to thank you as members of South Dakota Farmers Union for your strong working relationship and for all the support you've given the cooperative movement over the years. Thanks to Doug and Carla for the invitation to join you today. So very much appreciate the time, the platform. It's really unfortunate when you have this little spat going on within a co-op, and we hopefully we can get it to go away. Unfortunately, when a lawsuit starts, then people stop talking, and that's the wrong approach. So thank you again. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you very much, Tom. I know in the last couple of years in the legislature, we've had certainly many energy discussions about power and who serves who and where they get the power from. And I can guess that we'll probably continue those discussions in the future with all the energy needs that we have. So,
thank you.
Next up is Rob Leroux. Many of you have met Rob in the last couple of years when he's been at our conventions. And now he is the National Farmers Union's 15th president. He previously served as NFU's Senior Vice President of Public Policy and Communications, advocating for family farmers, ranchers, and rural communities in Congress and the executive branch. Prior to his employment with NFU, Leroux served over 22 years in Congress and USDA working on agriculture policy and communication. Most recently, he was the staff director of the House Committee on Agriculture, where he oversaw the committee's efforts during the 2008 and 2014 farm bills. He previously served as the Director of Congressional and Public Affairs at the Food Safety and Inspection Service at USDA and worked as an agriculture aide to Representative Colin Peterson and the late Senator Paul Wellstone. Leroux was raised on a dairy farm in Greenville, West Virginia. He graduated from Virginia Polytech and State University with a Bachelor of Science in Dairy Science and completed graduate work in agronomy at Pennsylvania State University. Rob?
All right, thanks so much. Hopefully my video and audio is coming through okay. I am joining you in this virtual setting from the farm in West Virginia, where I've spent a good fair part of the quarantining or pandemic here. And beyond a chance to help out here a little bit and have a much better place than downtown Washington, D.C., by which to do my job. Obviously, this was not the year that any of us expected. I had hoped since becoming national president in early March that I would have a lot more chance to get out and come out to South Dakota, get around to a lot of the states and see things firsthand on the ground. But this is where we're at. So one of the kind of silver linings, if you will, of doing this remotely from rural America is the fact that it gives me another platform to fight for rural broadband. So if my video flakes out, if my audio has trouble along the way, I'm guessing that several of you also have that problem at times here. And I use it every chance I can to just highlight, whether I'm talking to reporters or anybody in government, that the issue of rural broadband is real. And it is not only inconvenient for meetings like this, but it really puts a lot of rural Americans behind and at a huge disadvantage, whether we're talking about, you know, the effects it has even on rural healthcare and being able to run businesses effectively. It's a huge issue. But it's just one of the many issues, right, that Farmers Union is fighting for out there and that we're trying to fight from that grassroots level. I normally would kind of give you a PowerPoint. I'm going to forego a PowerPoint today, partly because I think, you know, as much of us may be zoomed out, if you will, or kind of meeting fatigued a little bit, I think that PowerPoints can sometimes not be the best way to kind of express what it is that we're doing at National. Things very different right now than, again, as we expected it to be. But talk to you about how we are trying to take the priorities and issues that you guys are facing out there on the ground and trying to affect change in a positive way to help support all of our members across the country. I would also start here by saying congratulations to you, to all of you that had anything to do here with the annual meeting and convention in this new format. It's not always an easy thing. It's not an easy choice to make that, but Farmers Union divisions across the country have found really unique and innovative ways to continue to try to engage their members and try to educate them and bring them up to speed and keep doing the will of the organization, which is really, you know, my hat off to everyone involved in this. It's a great job. So getting to the issues, obviously for many of us, as we came into the beginning of this year, 2020 or 2020 was supposed to be the year that agriculture kind of turned the corner, if you will. We were hoping for stronger commodity prices. We were hoping for stronger markets across the board. It was hopefully going to be one of those years when we were going to be able to really kind of shore up things after, you know, several years of really damaging economic conditions. And so we gathered in Georgia for the convention in early March. We went through the grassroots process. We determined what our priorities are. Many of them have been very similar priorities that we've had over the last several years, but including things like concentration and improving, competition for farmers and ranchers out there, looking for ways to improve or mitigate the effects of climate, including the multi-benefited approach of biofuels in that solution, and also looking at ways to kind of improve markets across the board after the damaging effects of things like the trade wars and so forth. So we come out of that, then we immediately go into kind of an upside down world, and we have the pandemic hit, and we have all of the effects that hit us with that. And boy, I tell you, in ag and in the food sector, did we not show that there was a lot of problems with the way that we have our food system set up right now? We have a system, right, that has been the envy of some because it has is very efficient, produces so-called cheap food, and nobody even really thought about where the food comes from because food was so abundant and always out there. But because we have a system that is so concentrated and you have so few people and so few companies rather in the middle here, whether we're talking about beef packers or really you can look at agriculture across the board, so few players in that when you have disruptions in that process, suddenly the effect is up and down the chain. Delays happen. You have product being dumped on the one end because it can't get to consumers. In some cases, couldn't even get to pantries, to folks who needed it. Restaurants were closing. You had farmers who were having to either destroy livestock, hold livestock out of condition, or in some cases of fruits and vegetables having to destroy perfectly good crops because the markets were so overwhelmed. So what we really proved in all of this is that we have a really a food system that has no resiliency in it. Now, this is nothing new to any farmers union member who's been fighting this issue for a long time. We've been talking about the growing and growing concentration throughout the food and farm sector, and the pressure that not only puts on farmers and independent ranchers, but ultimately on consumers. And if there's one kind of silver lining with all this disruption that took place and all the pain, is that for the first time in well over a generation, we had consumers going to the grocery store, unable to find products, and suddenly realizing that when they could find products and prices were getting, they had price spikes, getting gouged at the grocery store, and hearing the stories about just the devastating effect on farmers and ranchers on the other end, that money is going somewhere, right? And for the first time, folks really had a better understanding of realizing that you had folks in the middle who were taking money out of the pockets of farmers, money out of the pockets of consumers, and in some cases, sending that money overseas to places like Brazil. This is not a system that is sustainable or that we can keep going. And it is really one of the primary issues that we continue to push right now. We've been very thankful for the work of President Samke and a lot of folks across the country who've used a lot of opportunities through the media to talk about these effects, to talk about the problems, and to highlight that this is nothing, again, that is necessarily new. But what we had this year was kind of a perfect storm where the effects of that could finally be seen by consumers out there. That leads me into some of the kind of ongoing conversations that we're having right now with the transition. We do have changes coming. We have a change in the White House. We have a change, obviously, that will be coming to USDA. And there will be change on Capitol Hill for the agriculture committees that work on a lot of our issues in both the House and the Senate. But as we talk to the new folks in leadership roles or new members of Congress, we really stress, because we think that this consumer angle is an important one, because we know the story with family farmers, but for a lot of folks, they can more relate to their own lives and what consumers like themselves are experiencing out there, and talk about it through that lens, talk about the fact that this is also impacting at the ground level out on the farm, and you begin to see things clicking. And then we talk about solutions here. As we talk to President-elect Biden's transition team, we're doing the same thing. We were encouraged that on the campaign trail, you had some conversation about recognizing this level of concentration and needing to do something. They had conversations about also climate and the need to make sure that biofuels are an important part of that, and that any climate conversation, you have to have farmers at the table. Those are all positive things. As we look and talk to the transition itself at USDA, same thing, continuing to hammer the need. Right now we have a new potential nominee for Secretary of Agriculture. I say new, but obviously folks have seen that the expected nominee that Biden will announce is Secretary Vilsack. What we have in Secretary Vilsack, if he is the nominee and ultimately becomes Secretary of Agriculture again, is somebody who has a lot of potential, because he doesn't have to have a tour at the facilities at USDA. He knows his way around. He knows the programs. He knows what it takes to run a mammoth agency like that. He can hit the ground running. What we at Farmers Union are trying to make sure is that he's running in the right direction, and that he is steadfastly focused on the issues that are most important to us, and most important to family farmers and those rural communities out there. So as we talk about bringing more competition to the marketplace, it's about, at USDA, reviving GIPSA, bringing much more direct attention to the Packers and Stockyards Act, passing legislation that brings more transparency to price, that brings more cash sales to the price discovery process, really trying to, in some ways, level the playing field there. It's about also working with USDA and passing legislation to make it easier for small and medium-sized processors to actually be able to compete in this marketplace when you have these massive packers. Because if we're going to begin to balance things, we have to make sure that we have more processing at the local and regional level. This isn't, we talk about beef right now, but this is actually in a lot of sectors of agriculture. But beef is a perfect example right now because of just the extreme conditions right there. As we continue those conversations, though, it is really about making sure, again, that all of the priorities that you guys originally set at the local level, at your state convention, that comes back to national, and then gives us direction to push forward. But they're issues that have a real direct impact, meaning back in your own communities. So whether there's an ethanol co-op that had to shut its doors temporarily or maybe permanently because of all the disruption and the broken promises over the last 4 years, how do we bring stability about that? How do we bring that market back? How do we bring the demand for higher levels of ethanol? How do we restore stability to commodity markets across the board? How do we address climate? How do we address competition and concentration in the marketplace? The problems out there are huge, they're massive, but we can always stay in this game and fight for change. And I remain hopeful that we're going to be able to achieve some progress here as we go forward. We'll continue, obviously, to touch base with all of you. Feel free to reach out to National at any time. We're here, we work for you, and we want to do what is in the best interest of South Dakota. So with that, Mitch, I'm not sure what the process is, whether there's time for Q&A. I'm happy to do that, but I know that there are other speakers, so I want to be mindful of that.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much. I think we're just going to move on. And if there are questions, we will have people email them to us, and we'll get them to you, and then we'll get them published somehow. So thank you
Sounds
very
good.
much, Rob.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to turn the chair over to Carla Hoffenke, Executive Director for South Dakota Farmers Union. She served in this role since 2008 and has worked for the organization in other supporting roles since 1998. Prior to that, she was the purchasing manager at Shell Better Inc., serving in that capacity for 10 years. Carla, it's up to you to lead us through the next section of our agenda.
All right, well, thank you guys very much. We got a great crowd on today. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so we're going to have the election procedure explained here. You should be receiving a ballot here shortly from SDFU at sdfu.org. We're just a few minutes behind on getting that out to you, so I apologize for that. What you're going to need to do is hit reply and then fill in your choices. Don't forget your county name at the top, and then you hit the send button back when you are completed. These ballots need to be returned by 2:15 p.m. Central Time. So you have a few minutes in which to do that. And, oops. So you're going to be confirming for the state board positions today. District 1, Mike Miller. District 3, Gail Temple. District 5, Dallas Basil. And District 7, Representative Chad Johnson. For the delegates that we're going to send to the National Convention, which is also going to be virtual, you may vote up to 7 of these. We have Bill Chase, Hank Wannenberg, Rob Lee, Jeff Kipley, Rachel Kipley, Cheryl Schaefers, Janae Hansen, Carolyn Hansen, and Jerry Eide. All of these have been delegates in the past, except for 2 of them, Janae and Carolyn. And instead, they've been very active in the organization, though. So all great applicants there. You're also going to be voting on 2 different bylaw changes. One is going to be a time change for the election, just making it more generic so we can have better timing at the elections. And number 2 is going to be a change in the membership price. Now, this change in the price will not change what the counties or districts are going to get in their allocations. So again, you'll be receiving that ballot here shortly. Hit reply, fill in your choices, and don't forget your county name at the top. And then hit the send button at the end. You have until 2:15. So now I will turn the chair back over to Mitch, where we'll take a 5-minute break so we can allow the delegates to vote. So go grab some refreshments and we'll meet back here shortly. Mitch, in the meantime, has his choice to show you some slides or tell jokes and stories. His choice.
Great. Nothing like pressure. I'll see if I can share my screen here. While you're looking for your votes, your email to vote, try to get my screen set up. Got my toolbar covering everything. There we go. I thought I'd just run through the year in your review for 2020 here. Of course, it was highlighted by lots of hand sanitizer and masks. We've all become very familiar with that. Along with that, of course, we had a lot of social distancing, and even the cats found a way to stand in line. If 2020 was a slide, I suspect this is probably how it would have turned out. I saw this and I wonder who does sign this as a signed copy. I'd like to see the inscription on the front page. Might be interesting to see who that actually is. Is that Moses or somebody else? I'm just not sure. We had some construction projects that maybe didn't go quite according to Hoyle in 2020. I'm not sure how this ladder is supposed to work, but I suspect they had to pull this out and realign things as they were. This disability ramp got put in. I don't know that it'll ever be used, maybe by some skateboarders, but probably not by the intended folks. July 4th, we had a celebration in Mount Rushmore and Christie. I'm just kidding here. I'm really just kidding. This is just all in fun. You know, South Dakota generally thinks their tax dollars go to good work, but we had a tremendous fireworks demonstration in July in South Dakota. We had a lot of homeschooling going on in late spring and early fall. Here's day 4 of the physics class out on the ranch. I suspect that didn't turn out real well. I hope there were no doctor's visits involved. Math is not evidently a highlight for the ABC crew here. Biggest COVID-19 worries. I always thought these pie chart numbers were supposed to equal 100, but I'm sure they were crunching the numbers and things didn't turn out quite as they thought they would. Of course, we got to August and we had the bike rally in Sturgis. One lady decided she was going to try to pet a buffalo calf, and that earned her a visit to the local hospital where everything turned out fairly well, but there were a couple of buffalo that explained to her that baby calves are for looking at from your car, not from the seat of your pants. There was lots of talk around Thanksgiving about everybody staying home, don't visit your relatives, you know, that the government would really like you to just socialize with those that are closest to you. And so you had to remember to take out that transmitter and that turkey because the government was tracking how many gifts that you had. Lots of Zoom meetings, of course. Everybody is tired of Zoom. I suspect maybe this is how the Last Supper would have looked in a pandemic. We would have had one person at the meal and everybody else would have been on Zoom. We got to the election and old Jed would like to know who's counting ballots and who's keeping track of those corona cases. And I know it was months ago, but you guys in that toilet paper got a little bit crazy. My wife, I think every time we went to Sam's, we came home with another one. So we're good for about a year if anybody's running out. So. Carla, are all of our votes basically done? Do we know? I think we'll just pause here for a couple of minutes to get caught up. Looks like we have a few people that are still trying to vote, and our next speaker has not joined us yet. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Never quite know how these are going to go when you have this many folks, and getting people lined up and connected.
Is anyone else receiving ballots? This is Kathy Chase, and Bill and I have not received our ballots.
Looks like Caroline Hanson got hers.
I got mine, this Larry Bergen.
Larry got his.
I got mine, but just a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah, just on the phone.
Jason Soaren has not got his.
Got mine.
Okay.
I never got a ballot, but I never clicked on the tab either, so.
Could be a little lag. I would urge everybody to just refresh their email. That might help, depending on what your settings are. Carolyn Hanson's went to her junk folder or spam folder, and it comes from results@sdfu.org. So if you haven't got them yet, check your spam folder. Has everyone gotten their ballots and gotten them back? If you don't, you might want to unmute yourself or send us a message in the chat at the bottom of the screen. Sometimes you have to just take your cursor to the bottom of the screen to get the toolbar to pop up.
Mitch, just give me a minute here and we'll have ours done.
Okay.
I have not received ours.
And who was that just spoke?
This is Cheryl Schaefer's, Polk
Okay.
County.
Okay. We've got some folks working on it, Cheryl. Larry Wagner is looking for his ballot.
I just did that. Because it wasn't coming up at first.
Schaefer's are still looking for a ballot. We're checking the email for you to make sure we got the right email address, I think. Is there anybody else that's missing their ballot? I think it looks like we've got just about everybody else.
Bill Chase has not gotten his yet. Kathy did get hers.
Okay,
Found it in junk, but it's not either file on Bill's.
okay. Can you type in your email address in the chat box for us?
I can't find the chat box on this one today.
Okay, you want to just give it to me, or and I'll type it in there, or write it down for them.
Sure. BK Chase Farm at yahoo.com.
Okay,
Thank you.
you bet. Carla, am I good to move on to the next speaker?
We're ready to move on, Mitch.
All right, thank you very much. It was 1985, and I was out of college about 4 or 5 years, in between my first job and my second job, and I took a job at JCPenney in Sioux Falls selling finer men's clothing, which meant I was selling sport coats, suits, and shirts and ties, and doing it on a commission basis. My mother gave me great advice: make sure you sell everybody a white shirt and a blue shirt, because they can always be used that interchangeably with almost any suit. And it was at that time that I had my first introduction to Tom Daschle. Tom came in and he was very gracious to me. He asked me all the leading questions, where I was from, where I went to school, what my career plans were, those types of things. I'm originally from Wall, so we talked about Gordon Peterson, a longtime legislator in South Dakota, and Tom just could not have been more gracious, and I've been a fan ever since. So that was my first introduction, and I think he bought a white shirt and a blue shirt that day. So I thought my sales career was off to a fantastic start. So Senator Daschle is the founder and CEO of Daschle Group, a public policy advisor of Baker Donaldson. Senator Daschle served his home state, South Dakota, in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1979 to 1987, and then in the U.S. Senate from 1987 to 2005. He is one of only 2 senators to have served twice as both majority and minority leader. In addition, Senator Daschle is a chair of the board of directors at the Center for American Progress, vice chair for the National Democrat Institute, and a co-founder of the Bipartisan Policy Center. He is the author of Like No Other Time, the 107th Congress, and the 2 years that changed America forever. Critical, What We Can Do About the Healthcare Crisis, Getting It Done, and How Obama and Congress Finally Broke the Stalemate to Make Way for Healthcare Reform, and U.S. Senate, Fundamentals of American Government. He has co-authored his most recent book, Crisis Point, with former Senator Trent Lott. Senator Daschle, welcome to the South Dakota Farmers Union 105th Annual Convention. And I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Mitch, thank you very much for that very, very kind introduction. I'm not sure I still have those shirts, but you must have been a great salesperson, and I am very grateful to be reunited with you today. But I appreciate all that you do and your public service, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And it's a real pleasure to join the South Dakota Farmers Union leadership for today's meeting. Let me say that one of the reasons I was looking forward to joining is to have a chance once again to salute the leadership of your president, Doug Samke. I don't have to tell you this because it's very clear to each of you, I know, but I think Doug is one of the best farm leaders I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And South Dakota could not be more fortunate than to have him lead this great organization now. And I'm certainly proud to call him my friend. I've been watching the weather in South Dakota these past months, and it seems that I can assert without fear of contradiction that it's living up to its long-held reputation. From heavy snow in October to 60-degree temperatures in December, it's as unpredictable as farming itself. But I hope it's a good omen for things to come. Each of you deserve a few good breaks at this point in this crazy year we've experienced. I've been around now for well over 70 years, and I guess I come to believe that in some contexts there are 2 kinds of people: those who strive to make a living, and those who not only want to make a living, but want to make a difference. I may not know each of you like I know Doug, but I have to believe that every one of you fit in that latter category. And let me tell you, after watching and working with this organization for nearly 50 years, you have made a profound difference. In my view, you're the MVPs of farm organizations. And I would be confident in saying that anywhere to anyone. It may not always seem that way. American farmers have faced some very difficult times. And I sometimes wonder how much Washington listens or even cares. I think I've fought more battles together with you around the injustices of packer concentration than almost any other issue. The largest meat packers continue to consolidate their power as they drive smaller meat packers, along with farmers and ranchers, out of business. But at the same time, consumers too have been adversely affected. Over the past decade, while prices for hogs and cattle have fallen, retail prices for meat continue to rise. But you know all of this far better than I do. What I hope we can do together is to ensure that the new Biden administration not only knows about it, but it uses their power to actually do something meaningful to stop it. There's an old aphorism in Washington that I'm sure some of you've already heard. When all is said and done, there's always a lot more said than done. That certainly applies to pecker concentration. It's long past time to get something done. And with real persistence, I've no doubt that you can be the catalyst to make that happen. Our farm co-ops, too, have struggled mightily in recent years. And the coronavirus pandemic, especially in South Dakota, has only added greatly to their burden. I've always been impressed with their resilience in the face of enormous adversity. But as our rural communities fight for their survival, our farm co-ops are more important than ever. One of the keys to doing so is to ensure that COVID relief and economic stimulus policies are considered, that rural communities are in the mix and at the table when that happens. Whether it's advancing rural broadband, building new infrastructure, keeping rural hospitals and schools open, or ensuring our farmers a fair price for the food, feed, fiber, and fuel that they produce. Rural America and the co-ops that serve it deserve every bit as high a priority as those in urban and suburban communities across the country. It's up to each of us to ensure that policymakers know more about the tools that work to do that. The other day, Doug and I had talked about one of those tools, MSET. I'm highly impressed with the simple concept of farmers idling some land in exchange for higher price coverage and under crop insurance. It's a very innovative idea that presents a win-win for everyone. More management discretion, more protection for farmers, more carbon capture, and potentially far greater risk management for the government. We need to work on the commodity groups and others who have been reticent to commit to MSET, but it is a tool that I think holds real potential. This is a transformational time in Washington. COVID has changed the way we meet, as this meeting exemplifies, how we communicate, whether or not we travel, how we go to church, public events, and even how we shop for groceries. It's also been a bitterly divided time for our country. The good news is that over 160 million Americans cast their vote in the last election, one of the highest turnouts in recent history, in spite of the pandemic and the logistical challenges to an election that it brought on. I have to say, I have great admiration for the tens of thousands of people who work the polls and the state officials who ensure the integrity of the outcome. They deserve our thanks and great appreciation. The bad news is that President Trump still refuses to accept the outcome. He has challenged the results using every legal mechanism available. He's now filed 48 lawsuits. Thus far, he's been successful in one. That was to give greater access to his observers in a recount. Meanwhile, the Biden transition team is primarily focused on three priorities: personnel, COVID, and their policy agenda in the early months of the new administration. President-elect Biden's announcement today to nominate Tom Vilsack for Secretary of Agriculture, in my view, is great news. I know many of you know Tom like I do. I know him. I think I know him pretty well. My daughter worked for him for a number of years, and he and I have worked together on countless issues over the many, many years. And I have to say, I just love the guy. And I think he's going to do a fantastic job, and really, really excited about his nomination. Republicans feel somewhat emboldened, as they should, by the results of the national election. They may be able to keep the majority in the Senate, and they picked up a number of seats in the House. So there was clearly no blue wave. I wish I could forecast a new era of bipartisanship in Congress, but regrettably, I don't think I can. I fear the 117th Congress could be as polarized as it has now been for a number of years. But there may be a little cause for optimism on a number of fronts in the lame duck session. First, some encouraging progress has been made on a new COVID relief and stimulus package. Negotiations are still continuing, and there are a number of outstanding differences. But it is coming, and it is moving slowly but surely along. Second, it's imperative, of course, that they fund the government, that we don't have a government shutdown in just a few days. Agreement here is likely, although it is still unclear what form that will take. As this transformation in our country rolls into a new year, a new Congress and a new administration, My fervent hope is that our leaders in government, despite the deep polarization that we continue to experience, will agree on one thing in particular. I hope that we can all understand in Washington the importance, the critical importance of listening to the voices and the stories of rural America. One of my favorite quotes is simply this: "The best way to persuade is with your ears." Someone once reminded me that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a good reason. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. As our leaders in Washington begin to give thought to a new national direction, it's absolutely critical that they listen. At the same time, I always felt that sometimes the things government actually does in rural America go underappreciated. I remember a conversation I had with Tom Vilsack just last summer. He noted that just on his watch, over the 8 years he served as secretary earlier in this decade, the Department of Agriculture created opportunities for more than 1 million rural American families to buy a home, 18 million rural Americans to access cleaner water with newer water treatment plants, 6 million rural Americans gained access to high-speed broadband, and helped more than 100,000 small rural businesses get started that ended up employing over 500,000 rural workers. We don't talk about those accomplishments very much. I think we should. I think there's got to be a better understanding of how we can work together, and that takes both of us, those in rural America and those in Washington, to understand each other and appreciate the efforts that are underway. But we both have to listen. So as we enter the next decade of the 21st century, there are 4 areas that I would hope rural America and Washington could find meaningful opportunity for a common agenda to build on those accomplishments. The first is, of course, agriculture production and exports. I certainly don't have to tell you that farming is a tough, risky business. You can be the best farmer in the world, do everything right, and still be financially ruined simply because Mother Nature didn't cooperate. Keeping a smaller farm profitable is a challenge under the best of circumstances, but especially when commodities are based on a world market and farmers and ranchers have little control over the price they receive other than the timing of the sale of that crop or livestock. That is why farm policies are so important. We are a food secure nation. Our farmers and ranchers grow and raise all that we'll ever need to feed our own people. We import food out of choice, not necessity. But we also make an enormous contribution to feeding the world. 25% of all farm products are exported. These exports support both farm families and more than 1 million jobs for workers who get these products to places around the globe. Trade benefits this country, and while we always need to be sensitive and responsive to concerns about the loss of American jobs, we must also ensure that our policymakers know that fewer exports mean fewer farm families and fewer opportunities for rural small businesses and the employment that comes with them. It is vitally important for the Biden administration and Congress to listen carefully to our rural leaders as we formulate farm and trade policy that will continue to emphasize their importance to rural viability and growth. The second critical area is conservation and the need to develop a sustainable rural economy. Today, a record number of acres are enrolled in some form of land conservation. I'm told more than 500,000 landowners receive help to preserve soil, protect water, and clean air, but a lot more needs to be done. Over the past decade, South Dakota has seen enormous advantage that investment in conservation brings not only for sustainable farming practices, but for outdoor recreation as well. Conservation restores our land, improves our landscape, and increases habitat, which enhances hunting and fishing. Outdoor recreation is now big business, valued at nearly $700 billion. It's a rural job creator with millions employed in the industry living in rural America. Just this week, I heard a Nobel laureate say that climate change will make coronavirus pandemic look easy. I think he might be right. Rural America is in a prime position to provide our nation with the land and resources to help deal with it. It's been said repeatedly that South Dakota could be the Saudi Arabia for wind power. We're a wind-rich state, and it wasn't far back in history that we once called ourselves the Sunshine State. As the nation and the world transitions away from fossil fuels, there's no better place in all the world for wind and solar power to be developed. We made a start, but there's far more that can and should be done. The third pivotal area related to the transformation brought on by climate change is a recognition of the important role rural America continues to play in high-octane, low-carbon transportation fuel. Regardless of advancements in electric vehicles, it's highly likely that the nation will continue to rely on internal combustion engines for many decades to come. The question remains just how much longer we will tolerate the use of toxic and poisonous aromatics in our fuel to attain that higher octane. Rural America has now had a proven record and an immense contribution in cleaner air for 30 years plus, ever since the Clean Air Act amendment that Bob Dole and I offered in 1990, requiring the elimination of lead and the introduction of ethanol as a vital replacement. 15 years later, the Renewable Fuel Standard was enacted, further elevating the importance of ethanol in transportation fuel and creating an explosion of vibrant ethanol facilities with huge economic impact for South Dakota and rural America, and the addition of tens of thousands of new jobs. RFS has fulfilled its promise. In many ways, it was the launch vehicle for the ethanol industry that may have even exceeded our expectations. But I have to tell you, quite honestly, the reality in 2020 is that there is little or no possibility that a new RFS will ever obtain the necessary votes in Congress again. It is critically important we realize and recognize this reality and move on to what will put and keep ethanol in orbit for perhaps the next 50 years. That is creating a market for mid-level blends like E30. E30 presents one of the greatest opportunities for the future of ethanol in the entire history of the industry. The South Dakota Farmers Union has shown extraordinary leadership in the promotion and elevation of this critical fuel for the future. The potential for higher octane, lower carbon, and reduced greenhouse gases makes E30 the most compelling answer to the challenges we face in the transformation to a fossil-free transportation fuel. But for this transformation to be successful, we need to create a unity of purpose within the ethanol industry, which we don't have today, frankly, in the commodity groups, which we don't have today, in the farm organizations, which we don't have today. And that just makes me lament the fact that without that unity, much of what I've just described isn't possible. So we need to recognize the importance of that unity. And while we recognize it, recognize that while RFS served as a great launch vehicle, E30 will put us finally into orbit. We need to do a better job of reaching out to environmental groups, to the auto industry and the EPA to ensure the compelling data proving the value of E30 is fully understood and appreciated. The Biden administration will certainly reopen the SAFE rule to establish more ambitious goals for auto emissions, and therein lies the opportunity for the future of ethanol and E30. While statutory change is always preferable, moving to mid-level blends doesn't require it. Maybe I should just repeat that for emphasis. We don't need a new law. We've got the regulatory authority to do it right now. The administration has the authority to do it through regulation, and we must persuade them to do so. There may be no more important economic opportunity for rural America than this. The fourth and final critical area, and in many ways the most important of all, is to recognize the state of our health. We've had a healthcare crisis in South Dakota in our country. You all know that. I regret to acknowledge that our state now ranks first in the country per capita with COVID-related disease and death. It's incredible to me. I won't dwell on that, but I will say this. We've lost 1,000 people. I work very closely with Japan. I work every day with Japan. They have 130 million people. Do you know how many people they've lost entirely in the last 11 months? They've lost 1,900. We've lost 1,000. They've lost 1,900. But they wear masks. They socially distance. And every person in Japan has access to care. I'm struck by the number of polls that report that 40% of all Americans admit they couldn't pay an unexpected $400 medical bill. 40%. Health costs are a major reason for bankruptcy in America, and especially in rural America today. So it's not hyperbole to assert that addressing the cost, access, and quality of our healthcare in South Dakota is truly a matter of life and death. And we have an opportunity to address that this year and next year with the expansion of Medicaid in our state. And here again, I applaud Doug and the South Dakota Farmers Union for your leadership in joining this critical fight. It may be one of the most important issues of our lifetimes, and I mean that sincerely, affecting tens of thousands of South Dakotans, including many who farm and ranch. But that isn't all. It also could have a profound effect on the ability of our rural hospitals to even keep their doors open. It could easily be a factor on whether a family farm is able to survive in the coming decades. But it could also be an enormous boon to South Dakota, providing over $300 million more in federal revenues just in the first year alone. 38 states have already adopted Medicaid expansion. It's time South Dakota does too. We need to build as broad a coalition as possible to get that job done. And I'm confident that with Farmer Union leadership, we can do just that. I'm often asked what it takes for an organization not only to survive, but flourish in this transformational time. I've given a lot of thought to that question over the years, and I've always thought there were 4 qualities in particular that offer the answer to that question. First, my hope would be that you continue to recognize the importance of resilience. In agriculture, there's always going to be disappointments. There's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be really, really tough times. But the level of your resilience to endure them has never been more important than it is now. The second quality is innovation. I've long argued that agriculture is the most innovative of any sector in our national economy. Your productivity alone is proof positive of that great strength. As this transformation unfolds, that innovation will be even more important than it has ever been. Third, any organization needs to recognize the value of collaboration, of building coalitions, of working to build greater partnerships. In each of the 4 areas that I discussed, there is great need for collaborating with others. I mentioned ethanol. I hope we can find ways to collaborate. I mentioned the challenges we face with COVID. There's never been a more greater responsibility and need to collaborate. I mentioned all of the challenges we face in rural America today. It's going to take close collaboration. Fourth and finally, it's critical that organizations be engaged. Engaged in the public policy debates, in the regulatory decision-making, and in the efforts to bring meaningful change at both the state and the federal level. But no one knows that better than the South Dakota Farmers Union. So there you have it, in my view: resiliency, innovation, collaboration, and engagement. That's what's going to determine the future of this great organization. So I wish you great success as you go forward. And with that, Mitch, I'll be happy to stop and take a couple of questions.
Thanks, Tom. You are certainly one of the preeminent thought leaders in the country, and we like that type of thing in the South Dakota Farmers Union. I also understand today is a big day for you. It's your birthday. So happy birthday.
Age in life where I don't look at that, I kind of ignore them now, but I'm celebrating my 39th. It's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Perfect. Are there a couple of questions for Tom? Anybody with a question? Have to unmute yourself maybe, or stick it in the chat and we can get it.
This is Cheryl Schaefer's from Fulton County. And I'd kind of like to know why it is that we haven't been able to enforce that Clean Air Act. And, you know, it's been since the 90s, and it seems like we should do a better job of getting that enforced.
Well, Cheryl, you're exactly right. And there are a number of reasons for that. Number one, I don't think EPA has lived up to its responsibilities. We've had a long battle with EPA for a long time in recognizing the value of ethanol in particular, and dealing with all the myths around ethanol. And we have just had the hardest time with many of those buried in the burrows of EPA. And that's number one. Number two, it just doesn't get the priority. I said earlier, and I probably shouldn't repeat it, but when all is said and done, there's a lot more said than done. That certainly applies to the Clean Air Act amendments and to the regulations around them. Third, the power of many of the special interests in Washington. They get paid big bucks, and I'm a lobbyist. I love my work. I love to stay engaged in public policy, but special interests have certainly had their voices heard and adhered to in many cases. So we just have to do a better job. And finally, I just say, if I could lament once again, and I won't repeat this anymore, but our lack of unity has really hurt us in Washington across the board. And we just need to recognize that and work on it to make sure that we're as unified as a lot of others who have interests in this area.
Cheryl, Tom, if I could address that too. We had a meeting with the UN Foundation last winter in February in DC, and Reed Dushan he's a senior advisor for the UN, and he latched onto this and he's really run with it. He's getting a lot of attention. It's working with people like that as well, that he's got connections. He knows the people in EPA, and they also have come up with some documents that definitely show that we are right and that they have been covering this up for a long, long time. So we're making some headway, and with the work of what Tom's doing and the likes of Reed, you're going to see that we're going to get a lot more attention to this as long as we keep their feet to the fire.
Doug, that's such a good point. Reed Dutchin is one of my heroes. Doug and I work with him a lot, and he's just an amazing researcher and thoughtful leader in this space. And I don't know what the appropriate vehicle is to do it, but we ought to share his work with everybody to the extent we can, Doug. I just think it's so important, and it's probably as cogent and compelling a series of facts around these issues as I've ever read. And he keeps updating them. He just updated them about a week ago, and they're even better than they were when he originally drafted them. So really worth reading if you haven't had a chance.
Terry Sestak had his hand up. Terry, did you have a question or comment?
Well, how do we go about forcing the EPA to follow the rules? They seem to be their own entity.
Well, they do, and I have to say, I think it's been a bipartisan problem. It was a problem in the Trump administration. It was a problem in the Obama administration. It's been a problem for administrations, both Republican and Democratic. They wield a lot of authority, and I think there are a lot of people that just because they speak with such authority and because they use the bureaucratic tools they have available to them, they're oftentimes hard to overturn. You know, Congress has attempted to do a little bit of that, but because Congress is so divided on many of these issues, they've almost become inconsequential. It's just sad to say how dysfunctional Congress is these days. And I lament that as somebody who served 26 years in Congress. Well, actually 30 years if you count my staff time. And I lament that the legislative branch hasn't been more effective in building the checks and balances that our founding fathers had envisioned. So lack of congressional oversight and lack of congressional action, lack of willingness of people at the very top of Republican and Democratic administrations, those are all the reasons why these people in the EPA have seemingly had their way for decades.
Tom, my name is Rachel and I work with the Youth for Farmers Union. So my question is how are we going to get back to a more not we versus them mentality? And how long do you think that's actually going to take when we can actually find a subject such as maybe COVID and not make it political, having worked in the hospital and the patients don't believe that they're sick and they're dying, you know, it's like a political thing and it shouldn't be. It should be like a heart attack. But so how do I take a message to the, you know, as a high schooler and college students, we need to figure out how to lead them into an era of, you know, agreement or at least respecting everybody's opinion, even if we don't agree. So where do you know, how do you coach that and where do you see us going? I mean, we're so far from, I feel like, actually getting things done. And it's been like that for many years. And so how long until we can get to a happy medium again?
Well, that's such a great question. And I've thought about that a lot over the last year, especially. It's probably way too simplistic to give you this answer, but I'll give it a shot. First of all, I think it requires leadership at all levels. Certainly at the national level, we've just seen leaders, in my view, who have been so irresponsible with their rhetoric and with their tweets and with their expressions, or whether it's on the Senate floor or the House floor or the White House. You know, I'm just tired of it. I think we need leadership that is respectful, is civil, that respects science. I mean, that's not too much to ask. It used to be that we took that for granted. Dwight Eisenhower must be rolling over in his grave. John Kennedy must be rolling over in his grave. You know, we had real leadership that provided sort of a tone for the country. And we don't have that today. So, but it isn't just national leadership. You know, it's got to be at all levels. In peer, you know, we see a lot of the same stuff coming from peer. And I must say, even in organizations across the country and even in the local areas, some leaders are afraid to speak up. They're afraid of, I think they're intimidated. I think they're afraid of pushback. They don't want to get involved. And you can be respectful, but just state the facts. You can say, look, you may not agree with this, but boy, here are the facts. Here's science. You know, we've got to, I think we have to be a little more assertive, but respectfully so, and more civil. But if we don't push back, I mean, there are a lot of great quotes over history about people who didn't speak up and only learned too late. Their reluctance to speak up turned out to be very, very complicit in the problems that we're facing. Let's not be complicit in our silence. Let's be respectful, but let's ensure that we do try to set the facts straight. The second thing that I don't have an answer for is social media. Truth is just an option today. And that's just sad that it used to be when I grew up, Walter Cronkite gave us the truth every night. David Brinkley gave us the truth. We don't have the truth tellers and the media across the board that we all listen to. And social media is just in many ways, it's a treasured gift. In other ways, it's an absolute disaster. And we haven't figured out how to deal with social media and the lack of truth, but that's another challenge that this country is going to have to face.
Tom, we've got one more question. It comes from Dale Christensen. He's wondering about what potential Nichols has at EPA, given that she's not always been ethanol's friend.
Well, that's a good question. I've had many conversations with Mary over the years, and she's done a lot of good things in California, I have to say. I applaud her efforts to migrate away from fossil fuels. And she knows from California's experience what a contribution ethanol can make. We've got a lot of work to do. Mary isn't the only person, however, who's going to be making these decisions. You know, now proximity to the Oval Office is power, and those in the Oval Office, the Democratic Policy Council, it's called in the White House, that really sets policy, OMB, a number of people in the White House will have a lot to say about this as well. And I hope that Mary's position can evolve over time. She was representing California. Now she's going to be working in the country, and whether it's officially an EPA or someplace else, we don't know yet, but she will have a voice. But she will be one of a number of voices, and we've got to continue to figure out ways to work with her and others in the new administration. I'm really hopeful we can do that.
Tom, thank you very much for being with us today. You brought a great message, wonderful insight into what's happening in DC and across the country. We look forward to listening and hearing from you again in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitch. Happy holidays to everybody.
Next up is somebody you all know very well, our president, Doug Samke. He served as your state president since 2005. In that time, the organization has experienced significant financial growth, over $15 million. In fact, 3 years ago, he was given the honor and responsibility to serve as president of Farmers Union Enterprises, something no South Dakota Farmers Union president has done before. His election as Farmers Union Enterprise president is a testament to the hard work and dedication that Doug Samke displays on a daily basis. I get to work with a number of leaders across the state. Some are leaders in name only. It is refreshing to work with Doug, where there is very little rhetoric that you have to experience with him. He tells you like it is and is not afraid to step out and be a leader. And that is refreshing in today's day and age, as you just heard from Tom Daschle, that we need more of those types. Doug could provide a college course on leadership from what I've seen the last several years and what he's done. So Doug, take it away.
Well, geez, thanks, Mitch. You did that exactly as I wrote it. I can't believe it. You followed that very well.
I know who signs the paychecks.
Well, first of all, you know, how do you follow somebody like Senator Daschle? I mean, he just knocks it out of the park every time. And I told some of the guys earlier today in our FUMPA meeting that my speech, I'm just going to have to throw it away, and I pretty much literally will. I mean, him and Rob and Hal, they touched on the important things that I wanted to touch on, and so here I am following up, and I'm going to say basically the same things, except I will say that, Rachel, your question is exactly what this organization has been trying to do as long as I've been here and prior to me. And that is to involve everybody to be leaders in their own right, in their area, and continue to do what we need to do to make this country better. Not only in our county, not only in our city, but in our state and this country. And I couldn't be prouder to have someone like Tom Daschle to look up to. I remember I was just telling him the other day that the reason I'm doing this is because when I was graduating from high school, he was running and got elected his very first time. And we knocked on doors for him around town and in Aberdeen. And it was my first experience of what it was like to work on a political campaign, and really wasn't much. I mean, it's just some of his high school kids that seen it as an opportunity to get out and ride around together and knock on some doors and have a little fun. And you know, the rest is history. I mean, Senator Daschle, as Mitch said in his introduction, went on to become majority and minority leader. And I've always looked up to what Tom has done, and the work ethic that he demonstrates is exactly what we need to do and continue to teach our kids to do the same thing. It's not just good enough to do a job. You need to do it the best that you can. If you're going to do a job, you need to do it so you put your name on it and you're proud of that. And sometimes you fall short. I mean, we all know that. That's what's happened to us a lot of times in Farmers Union. We go to the legislature. I mean, we're outnumbered a lot of times with our point of view. A lot of times we're out front. We come with ideas, for instance, like hemp. I mean, hemp was an issue that was Farmers Unions long before it became sexy. And, you know, people like Lester or Oren Lesmeister and Lee Qualm, you know, seen that and they stuck up for us, and look what we have today. But, you know, let me regress just a little bit. First of all, I got to tell you a quick story. You know, it's Christmas season, and you know, trying to do a little bit of shopping as close to home as I can. My wife and I went to town the other day and kind of lost her in the shopping center there, and she called me and she says, "Where are you at?" And I said, "Well, you know, you remember when we first got married and I couldn't buy you that real fancy piece of jewelry at that nice little jewelry store?" And, you know, she started to kind of choke up on the phone. And so she, you know, she's thinking, "Oh, yeah. And I said, "Well, I'm in the gun shop right next to that." So she didn't find that very funny, but, you know, I mean, we relate on how we relate. Let me talk a little bit about Tom Vilsack. I've got to meet him a couple of times as he was Secretary of Agriculture through the Obama administration. This has been a topic around the national boardroom up until now of what we see and who we seen as being a good person for us. And the one thing that I've constantly said, I mean, whether it was going to be him or whether it was going to be Heidi Heidkamp, who, I mean, I think Heidi would have done a very good job for us. We got a direct line to her. We can talk to her just like I can talk to Tom. But the thing about it is, one thing Vilsack brought to the Obama administration was that they needed to respect those of us out here in the countryside. The Obama administration, and again, I'm going to regress clear back to 2008, they didn't really buy into that concept. They really didn't buy into the fact that what Tom was saying was true. Now, that being said, he told the same thing to this administration, the Biden administration, and Joe bought into that. Matter of fact, I can remember a conversation this summer with Darren Von Ruden from Wisconsin, and we were talking about whether we should do something with some outreach with Tom and the Daschle group with the transition or with the Biden campaign to educate them on the agricultural issues. And Darren's comment was, "Well, I think it's a lost cause." And when I asked him why, he said, we invited them to come to a meeting for us, and we'd introduce them to some of the people in the communities, in the rural communities, and share our ideas, and no one's responded. Well, I reached out to Tom, and Tom reached out to Vilsack, and Vilsack reached out to the Biden campaign. And lo and behold, they started working directly with Farmers Union in Wisconsin. And we all know the story there today. They won Wisconsin. And it wasn't just because of the inner city, it was because of the rural vote. And that's the kind of connection we'll have now. I mean, I'm very, very proud to say that, you know, Farmers Union has worked with Tom Vilsack in the past, and I think it will continue. The other thing, those of my relationships in the ethanol world, the likes of Nick Budish from Siouxland Energy and Jim Sire from the Glacier Lakes Energy, they see Tom as a very good friend, a very big ally for us in the cabinet. So, you know, again, you know, I think everything that Senator Daschle just talked about, you know, the RFS needs to go away. We've been saying that for a long, long time. We've been telling that to the talking heads of the industry. And I've also been reminding everybody that you got to remember this industry wasn't started by ethanol people. There was no such thing as ethanol people. There were family farmers and ranchers that invested in ethanol that built this business. And we're also the ones that still provide the low-end product that goes to them and that they make the money off of. And some of us are lucky enough to be invested in them, but not nearly enough. And what I guess the other thing I'd like to point out is just imagine this. And I know we want to talk about antitrust, and that we feel that Vilsack and the Obama administration let us down, and don't kid yourself, I feel that way too. But at the same time, let's also remember that there's only been one thing in history that we as farmers or anyone's ever been able to do to make sure that our prices rise. And that was the introduction of the RFS and ethanol. Otherwise, it's always been weather related, or that someone had a bad crop someplace in the world. That's always what's been driving the markets, but not when ethanol was introduced. Remember when the RFS came along and we ended up with the E10? Remember how markets just rocketed? Now did they overshoot? Yes, we all know that. But now just imagine that same growth. You had that same growth in your communities. You had good cattle prices. You had good grain prices. And imagine that starting over again if we get an E30 across the nation as a additive for removing the aromatics from the fuel, so we have good air, good clean fuel, and we have address the health issues of the inner city. That's what we can do here with this. And like I mentioned, working with people like with the UN Foundation and Reed Dushin, I mean, we got the dominoes lined up here, folks. We are ready to knock them over and really make something happen. We just need to continue to hold fast, do what we've been doing, talk about what we've been talking about, and believe. And don't be afraid to address those people that want to say, "Oh, you farmers, you just need to go to electric vehicles. You got to, your liquid fuel is old." No, don't believe that. First of all, we can't even get there for 30 years. If we had to replace every vehicle today, light vehicle today, in the fleet of the United States, it would take 30 years to replace them. We're going to have to continue to use liquid fuel some way, somehow going forward. And as Tom also stated, the other thing that we need to talk about is healthcare. And this pandemic has demonstrated that to me more than anything. We've all lost friends. We've all lost family members. We lost members of our own organization to this horrible disease. And I don't know why anybody wouldn't do the 3 W's to continue to stop and fight this disease. It's the only thing we got right now. For crying out loud, wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance around people. Franklin Hosen doesn't have his wife anymore. We almost lost Chad Johnson. We know other family members that have lost their mothers or their fathers. We know family members that have people that are very sick from this right now. This has gone on too long. We cannot put up with this. We need to step up, be a leader in our community. Don't be afraid to wear your mask, for crying out loud. And do your best you can to educate everybody that this is not a political issue. This is about taking care of each and every one of us. And then the other thing, the board has stepped up and decided that we need to be part of this Medicaid expansion issue. And believe me, it's going to change. As Tom said, this is going to change the way the state operates and works. Because Farmers Union has gotten into this circle. It is going to happen. It's going to work. Until we came to the conversation, it was slow dragging along. No one was talking to each other. It was a political issue. They were making it a political football, and they wanted to show that one party could do it and the other one couldn't. Well, let me tell you, folks, I've told everybody that I've talked to in this group that we're going to leave our knives, our guns, our pitchforks at the door. We're going to concentrate on one thing and one thing only, and that's to pass Medicaid expansion for everybody in the state of South Dakota. The healthcare industry needs to step up to this because they are going to be the big recipients. But at the same time, our county commissioners need to as well, because what the person can't pay for individually, what the insurance companies don't pay for, we pay for. Our tax dollars, our county tax dollars pay for. And you don't think that's much? Go see what the county takes in at the end of the year and see what's left over for that type of thing. You talk to any county commissioner, they will tell you. So if I ask you to do anything today, please speak to your county commissioner, tell them to get on with the State County Commission Association, and tell them to join us in this fight. And then the next thing, let's talk to our Indian reservations. This is one area that they've been struggling too long in the same topic. And the best thing about expanding Medicaid healthcare is when you have a healthy place to go, when you have good healthcare, when you have good doctors, when you have good places to go, you do that. You take care of yourself. So it makes other parts of your life easier. It's easier to learn. It's easier to make sure that our kids are going to school. And I just can't say enough about what we need to do as leaders here on this topic, folks. This is not going to be easy. The legislators will not roll over and do something with this, although we're working with some of them to try to see about introducing some language this year for the session. I've had several inquiries, not only from the Democrats, but from Republicans as well. But I can tell you that they're being told by the talking heads of the healthcare industry not to do it. I think we should do it. I think there's no reason not to do it. And as leaders, they should step up. As Tom said, forget the political partisanship. Let's do this for the people. Let's do this for the reasons you were elected. And if they can't do it, then we have to take it to the ballot. And we plan to do that. We plan in March, the group plans to start collecting signatures. And we've got to collect 50,000 signatures, folks, for a constitutional amendment. We met with our legal counsel, Brendan Johnson, the other day, and he advised us that we should forget about doing anything other than the constitutional amendment. Initiative measures just will not hold. And that we should have a drop dead date of July 1st, 2023, that they need to implement, the legislature needs to implement this language. And so I ask you to continue to approach your legislators, approach your county commissioners, approach anybody that you think may be interested in this. And even those that you don't think will, just talk about it. Because the last thing we need is anybody throwing darts and arrows at us about this topic when it's the right thing to do. That's one thing that Farmers Union has always done, is the right thing. And we will continue to do the right thing. Again, like I said, the whole topic of today, our convention is the time of us to get together and socialize. Unfortunately, this is the only way we can do it right now. But we are fortunate that we have this technology, because otherwise it would make it even tougher. And, just keep in your hearts and prayers those that are shut-ins, those that are in the nursing homes and in their care, those that are caring for them, because they don't have any other choice. They have to stay where they are. They don't get to even go out. So again, do those 3 W's for them people, if nothing else. And I also ask you to keep in your prayers the healthcare workers. I've got 3 members of my family that are wore out, and I'm sure you all do too. They're wore out, they're tired, and they're just barely getting through the peak of what we're doing now. And we know it's going to get worse as we go into the deeper parts of the winter. So keep them in your hearts and prayers and mind as well. And let's do this. We'll make this happen. We will show that Farmers Union is still relevant. Farmers Union is a group that brings everybody together. We're about cooperation. We're about legislation, and we're about our members, and we're about doing everything we can to educate anybody to make things better, not only for our members, but for all our rural communities. So on behalf of my wife and my family, I bless and thank God for every one of you, and Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Now is the time that we're going to do some of the business for the day. We're going to be using a polling feature, and we're going to give you a sample of that right now. It should be popping up on your screen. There it is. You can answer the question and see if you get it right. Did everything work, Ellie? Are we in good shape there?
It looks like people are still voting, so we'll
Okay.
give it about 10 more seconds.
All right.
Thank you for everyone participating. The correct answer is actually no. This is the first and hopefully only time that the virtual convention will be held for Farmers Union, not the 50th. So hopefully we won't be doing this for the next 50 years, but we share the results here, and I'll let you take it over, Mitch, and we'll start the whole process with all the polls moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so for the delegates, you were sent a packet prior to the convention. In the packet is the financial report for the organization. Do I have a motion to accept the financial report?
Motion to approve the report.
And that was by who?
Luke Rendell.
Luke Rendell, motion to, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Larry Bergen. And now we will vote. Thank you. Also included in the packet was a copy of the 2019 State Convention minutes. If you've read the minutes, do I have a motion to accept those?
Yes, this is Kurt Schoeneman.
Kurt Schoeneman moves that they be accepted. Is there a second?
Second, Dale Christensen.
Second by Dale Christensen. And now we will vote.
And this is Ellie, and I just want to clarify that only delegates are allowed to vote in this process.
If you're not a delegate, you can just click on the X up at the top and the poll will disappear. Thank you, Ellie. Everybody accepted that. Now we're going to move to the policy portion of the meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Soaren, the Vice President for South Dakota Farmers Union. Wayne, you are up.
Thanks, Mitch. We're going to also use the poll for our policy. So that was a good practice. So Janae, you're part of the policy committee.
Yes, thank you. Hello, good evening, everyone, or afternoon. And so I am going to go through each section of the policy and move those in the three sections that you see on your agenda, and then we'll get into the special orders. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I would move section 1, pages 1 through 14 to the section on education as presented for approval.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Jeff Kipley, Brown County will second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion at all? It's both just a yes or no on this section. So if you want to vote now, that would be fine. The motion has passed. Thank you again.
Okay, I would move Mr. Chairman, I would move section 2, pages 14 through 25, up into the section on economics as presented.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
This is Caroline Hanson from Schmidt County. I'll second that.
Thank you. You should have had this all information in your packet, so you could have pre-read all this, and so you'll know where all of the changes have been made. So at this point, let's vote on section 2. Okay, the section 2 has passed. Thank you again. Janae?
Mr. Chairman, I would move section 3, pages 25 through page 42 up into the portion on special orders and policy as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Robert Lee, Kingsbury County. I'll second it.
Thank you. Was somebody wanting to speak? Okay, hearing none, let's proceed to vote on section 3. Okay, section 3 has passed. Thank you again. Just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a policy meeting. It's generally late summer, early fall. So if you'd like to participate in that, all members are welcome to come to that. So our first special order of business is the truth in labeling and promotional meat products. Janae?
Mr. Chair, I would move the truth in labeling and promotion of meat products special order, and as it's presented in your packet, it will be special order number 2.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second, Sandy Giddings, Hockin County.
Thank you. Everyone should have had the special orders in their packet. Anybody have anything that they want to have explained to them? Hearing none, then let us move on and vote on special order number 1. Okay, special order number 1 has passed. We will move on to special order number 2. Janae?
Mr. Chairman, I would move the federal cattle spot market special order as it is presented in your packet. It's titled Lyman County Spot Market.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Scott Closely, Old County, second.
Thank you. Any explanation needed here? It's pretty self-explanatory. Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. Okay, this special order is passed. Thank you again. Janae?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Ellie High Street. We have a couple folks who have raised their hands.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who was it? Mary Ellen raised her hand. I don't know if she's still on, and I don't know if we want to.
I just wanted to point out that in my packet anyway, the special orders are not numbered the same as what you're doing. So it might take people a little bit.
Okay, I'll slow down a little bit then. Thank you. Ellie, you said there was another one?
Terry Sazdak.
I'm sorry, Terry, go ahead. Terry, are you on?
Terry might have had his hand up.
I forgot to put my hand back down.
Okay. That's all right. Yeah, the technology, we're working on it. Do I hear another one?
Wayne, this is Kirk Shoneman.
Yes.
Is it supposed to be Fed cattle spot market or federal cattle spot market? I'm looking at the sheet, and I'm looking at the screen, and I would assume it's supposed to be Fed cattle spot market.
Mr. Chairman, it is supposed to be Fed cattle.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll change that title. That should be Fed.
The second word in the paragraph should also be Fed. Start
yes.
off. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I had that. Did I? That one has passed. So we'll move on to the next special order, enforcement of the Packers and Stockers Act. Janae?
I would move special order titled Enforce Packers and Stockyards Act for approval. In your packet, it is labeled District 2 Packers and Stockyards.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. This is one of the things that we've been talking about during this convention, so I think it's of timely importance. Anybody have anything that they need explained to them? Okay, let's proceed to vote. Okay, that special order has passed. So let us move on to the next one, which is the merging of departments. This is not in your packet, so I will allow a little time here so that you can read it. It is on the screen.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and read it out loud for folks as well while they're reading it over, just to make sure everyone has seen it because it isn't in your packets.
Okay,
And just
Janae.
for some background information, this is just one the policy committee that we finalized before or after everything was ready to be sent out. So South Dakota, so merging South Dakota Department of Ag and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. It reads, South Dakota's #1 industry is agriculture, and the state's farmers and ranchers are the backbone of this industry. South Dakota's farmers and ranchers need to be made a priority of the state government and be ensured an adequate voice when it comes to resources, policies, and support for production agriculture. The purpose of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources is to protect water and land, while the purpose of the Department of Agriculture is to promote and protect agriculture in South Dakota. These two missions stand independent of one another, while these two agencies serve as a check and balance system for one another. The merging of these two departments will result in fewer seats at the table for our farmers and ranchers. South Dakota Farmers Union calls upon the 2021 South Dakota Legislature to reject any plan to merge the South Dakota Department of Agriculture with the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources or any other state agency to ensure that agriculture, farmers, and ranchers remain a priority. And Mr. Chair, I would move that special order as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Jeff Kipley.
I'd second it, Cheryl Schaefer's.
Okay. Thank you. Any explanations or anything here? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. Okay, this special order has passed. Janae?
The next special order is I'm set. So in your packets, it's labeled special order business number 3. So I would move special order titled Next Farm Bill to include inventory management and soil enhancement tool as presented.
You. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. This is the same one we've been promoting for a couple of years, and hopefully with a new administration, maybe we can get this moved forward so that we can use it. So any discussion or any clarifications on this special order? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. Okay, the poll says that we have passed that special order. Janae?
So the next special order we have should be regarding the pandemic federal aid. It was titled Special Order Number 1 in your packets. So I would move special order titled Distribution of Pandemic Federal Aid as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any clarification on this one? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. The poll says that this special order has passed. Thank you. Janae?
So the next special order in front of you is regarding beef checkoff. It's titled Lyman County Beef Checkoff. The policy committee actually presents this one to you without recommendation. So we would have to have a motion to table for any discussion on this one and voting.
Okay, so that everybody is clear, this has been presented with no recommendation from the policy committee, so I would need a motion to move this forward from the floor or to table it from the floor.
And actually tabling was probably the wrong word, but to discuss it or vote on it. Because Jerry can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe if no one votes to have the discussion on it, it will just be lost.
I would make
if no
a
one
motion to
moves.
move it forward.
Who is Lyman? Okay, I do have a motion to on the floor for this beef checkoff. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second it. Hank Wannenberg, Gregory County.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Jerry, should we have a short discussion on this one, or is it part of the, being it's not a recommendation?
You have to vote to consider it since it came from the floor, since it's basically came with no recommendation, right? You have to vote to consider it. You have a motion in a second, and then you can discuss it. Your rules of the convention say you can discuss it, that you just can't make any amendments. So it's still a pass or fail vote, but you can discuss the merits.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. At this point then, is there any discussion on this motion?
This is Hank Wannenberg from Gregory County, and I sit on the policy committee, and I believe kind of the reason we didn't motion to this out of policy committee is because we thought that it kind of conflicted with policy now because Farmers Union supports checkoffs. But I did research our policy a little bit after our policy committee meeting that night, and I see on page 6, basically right at the beginning of our policy, there's a section on beef checkoff, and that we believe in beef checkoff reform, and it goes on from there, but it just talks about how we think there should be a separation between the checkoff dollars and NCBA, and that it should be all producer run, and I believe that that's the kind of the whole gist of this petition that's circulating, because they want to do a reform it. So I guess that's why I'm in favor of it. I think it's okay to support it as an organization.
Thank you, Hank. Anybody else have anything?
Oh, when I wrote this.
Hold on, just one at a time, please. Go ahead.
Brett Kinsey, Lyman County. When I wrote this, my goal is to give every producer the opportunity to vote on the checkoff. And if there is a referendum effort in progress right now. I would like Farmers Union's support of this referendum process that simply gives the right to vote to every producer who pays the beef checkoff.
Okay, thank you. There was somebody else that wanted to speak.
Yeah, Jeff Kipley, Brown County. I guess my problem with it is stating that you can voluntarily participate in this program. I think for all the faults of the checkoff, it has been a good tool for the beef industry. And if everybody starts opting out of it, I think we are going to cut ourselves at the knees. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Mary Ellen Camach. As a past member of the South Dakota Beef Industry Council and digging into the checkoff quite a bit, the checkoff was set up and came about by legislation from Congress. And to have any major changes to it, that has to be done through Congress. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Brett Kinsey, Lyman County, the referendum process is laid out in the Beef Promotion Act and Order of 1985. It's in the act. 10% of producers can sign a petition that will urge the Secretary of Agriculture to bring the checkoff to a vote of producers, beef cattle producers.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any others? Hearing none, then let's proceed to vote. Okay, I have the motion to for the special order of beef checkoff passing. Thank you. Janae?
Okay, the next special order on our agenda is in your packets. It's titled District 2 Farm and Leg and Soil Health, but it should be probably ledge. I would move special order farm legislation and soil health as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other clarification that needs to be happen here? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. Oh, excuse me.
Wayne, I'd like to comment.
Yes.
With Jerry Pittick.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Jerry Pittick in Corson County. In the southwest corner of Corson County, and anybody that knows about Corson County would understand what I'm talking about. In the second paragraph, it talks about legislation to stop less favorable land from being farmed. First of all, do we want a bureaucrat dictating what we can farm and what we cannot? And the second part is the intent would be to improve soil health. Because where I live and the type of land that I have and some of the neighbors have, I can see that because of appropriate farming, that land has become productive without erosion, in whether wind or water erosion. And it also has went from zero carbon amount to quite considerable, and an ability to absorb moisture. And so to say something is undesirable is a misnomer, And to say that, well, poor land should not be farmed. It should be farmed, but it needs to be farmed appropriately, and it can be extremely productive. And I'm the third generation in this corner of the county. And we have had probably some majority of the poorest farmland and ranch land. And we're still here. And a lot of the people that had better land packed up and left and couldn't make it. So the fact that you cannot make a living on poor land is a misnomer. And I don't believe we want a bureaucrat, wherever that person may be, dictating how we can farm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Anybody else?
Cheryl Schaefer's Falk County. I'm looking at this and I see that I'm set all over it. You know, I think that the I'm set is a voluntary way to make this happen. And I guess I'd like to say we should work harder on the I'm set than on something that provides for bureaucrats to tell us if our land is good or bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I got a question. Can the maker of this special order tell me, does this intended statewide or is this for federal? Because it mentions legislators and legislation. I just, for clarification, Mitch and I would really like to know.
Janae, do you know anything of where this origin came from that we could ask?
So I don't know for sure. I'll just say when we met as a policy committee, we had hoped to maybe just take some of this language and incorporated it into the IMSET special order, but just because of timing and things like that, we didn't have the opportunity to do that. So I know it comes out of District 2. So if there's someone from District 2 that could clarify what the intention was here.
Luke,
Mr. Chairman, I believe it came from Sanborn County.
Okay. Luke, did you have some insight in here?
Wayne, I apologize, I don't. I just know that it came from District 2.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from District 2 or which county was it, Carla?
It wasn't Sanborn County.
It wasn't.
This is Mary Ellen. I don't have any answers to that, but perhaps this isn't as urgent as some of the other special orders, and maybe this is something that should be carried forward to our next policy meeting, end of next summer, early fall.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything? Doug, I couldn't come up with an answer to your question, so we'll just have to move on from there.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree with what Cheryl Schaefer said earlier, that this has IMSET written all over it. And that's why I asked the question, is this intended for federal or for legislature?
Okay. Anybody else? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. This special order of business has failed. I think we shall probably move it forward and see if we can add it with the IMSET or something like that. So this one has failed. Janae?
In the final special order that we have for you in your packets, it is titled Special Order Number 4. So, Mr. Chair, I would move special order titled Support of Experts in Keeping South Dakota Communities Safe as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any explanations here? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote. And the results are this motion, this special order has passed. Thank you for everybody for your patience in the new technology that we had to use to get this done, but I think it's worked pretty well. I also wanted to take this time on behalf of the Farmers Union Industries, which I sit on, to kind of promote one of our activities. You know that our fundraising efforts for this year have been curtailed quite a bit, as just about everything has this year. And so the Farmers Union Industries has pledged some money to match any dollars that you give to the foundation up until, I believe it's December 31st. So, you know, if you feel like you could spare $10 to help fund the education department at South Dakota Farmers Union, that would be great. And the industries will match each dollar that you donate. So this is quite an opportunity to really help the foundation in its mission for education. So if you can find it your way to donate a little money to the foundation, I believe it's on the website and possibly here on this site here. So please do so if you can. Mitch, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Wayne. Now I think we're at the point where we need to know the election results, and I guess Carla, are you sending those to me or somebody else going to announce those?
Hi, Mitch. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Sorry, I got kicked off my computer, so I'm trying to get into another one here. Okay. So the results of the election are all board members passed. The Article 3 and Article 5 both passed. And our National Farmers Union delegates are Bill Chase, Hank Wanneberg, Rob Lee, Jeff Kipley, Rachel Kipley, Janae Hansen, and Jerry Eide.
Sounds good. Congratulations to all the people for the convention and the board members for retaining their seats. That's fantastic. I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. I hope that next year we get to see each other in person with a cup of coffee and a cookie. It'll be much better and more informative than what we have. I think it went very well. I appreciate everybody's indulgence for what little problems that we did have. There will be a board meeting immediately following this. You should have gotten a separate Zoom link for that meeting. So once we sign out, if you'll sign back in to go to that board meeting, that would be great. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jeff Kipley, Brown County, so moved.
Second. Dale.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Mitch. You did a good job.
Thank you.